Hello and welcome to another ohmTown Daily News Show episode. Hello, I'm Mayor Watt. I'm the one that runs that site right there. What is ohmTown? ohmTown.com is a news aggregator, and it gathers several hundred news articles into, or I should say news sources, into a single repository at ohmTown.com. All of the news sources have been vetted by me and either run for a long period of time now privately, and I'm looking at it for efficacy. Are their articles truthful? Are they backed up by other resources, other references? If they all measure up, then I add them to my engine that goes out and crawls sites and finds interesting headlines. Then it funnels it into 6 categories. They are create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. I take a sample of these news headlines. Each one of these eventually, not the headlines, but the categories, lead to a show. That show right now is only the daily news show. If you look at the screen, you'll actually see them with a little category like the continuity report or Mobble or Smack Talk. They're found underneath these categories at the top of the website. I'm looking for hosts and co-hosts, and each one of these ultimately will lead to 50 shows a week, each one an hour long, maybe longer if there's engagement, if there's delay, things like that. But the intent is to run a network of 50 shows every week. And when we're not live, we restream something. Focus primarily on Twitch, and then each episode, at the end of the episode, is processed and then ported over to YouTube for long-term storage, because Twitch only allows me 14 days. And then also to a podcast under the ohmTown umbrella. So if you're interested, let me know either in chat or an email or a DM at Twitter or via Twitch itself, YouTube, wherever. Carrier pigeon, smoke signal, whatever it takes. If you are interested, and we can reach an agreement, we can talk about it for a little bit and see, what we can do. Maybe you can host or co-host. And if you co-host, you'll be on the screen here, either in this spot or up there or wherever. Really depends, because what I do is I take this sampling of headlines that I think are interesting, about 20 of them every day, and I talk about it. I add my particular context to it, both personally and professionally, and try to give additional value-added context to it. Sometimes it may not be that valuable. That's up to you to decide. But in the meantime, instead of rambling on, let's get into today's show. The very first article here is about Apple, and so it ends up in the Smack Talk channel. I'm waiting for laughter, but since it's just me, not too much laughter, at least on my side. Anyway, Smack Talk is about Apple and its competitors, but in the context of Apple and its ecosystem. In this particular instance, the article says it's sideloading is a malware danger, and Apple tells that to U.S. lawmakers. So the snippet that my aggregator grabbed was, Apple has written to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee to dispute claims made by an expert about sideloading. It's got to be expert, and there's a typo. About sideloading, insisting its arguments about the technique being a malware vector are justified. I would say that anybody that thinks that sideloading software into anything would not be a vector for malware has to be cherry picking something. There is, without a doubt, the ability to inject malware into a system if you can sideload into it. This has happened with Android. It's happened with every piece of operating system, every piece of software. If I can sideload into it, I can inject malware. But let's click this link and take you over to the source of this. This is an article written for appleinsider.com by Malcolm Owen. Has a great picture. What I want you to do, because I won't go through the whole article talking about it, because what I do is I read that snippet, and then I go over to the article, and my reaction is just as much your reaction. Maybe not. I mean, you may know more about this, but the idea here is that I want you to go over, I encourage you to go over to appleinsider.com and read this whole article, and then come back tomorrow and talk to me about it, or later today in the chat. On ohmTown.com or on Twitter or on YouTube once it gets posted there. But I'm actually trying to get you to go over and read the entire article and then come back to me. The idea of this not being a vector for malware seems rather absurd. So it says, in response, Apple argued that sideloading is beneficial to malware producers, as it relies on users being tricked to download it rather than requiring hackers more directly to break the device security, which is absolutely true. If I can get you to click on something and sideload the software into the device, who's to know what actually goes on? And it's not about the tech savvy people. It's all about the rest of them. And it's, I end up picking a fight when I say things like what I'm about to say, but it's absolutely true. To allow somebody to do something like this, right? And then say, well, it's on the consumer to have to worry about this stuff is nearly sociopathic, if it's not just overtly sociopathic. If you, as a business owner, don't care what your customers do, and they get abused, they get harmed, everything that takes place on your device is in your name. It is an extension of your business. So allowing somebody to disrupt the integrity of your operating system, your device, its connection to a network, the security of the device, the security of the personally identifiable information, the confidential nature of the information that's on the device. I'm sorry, I can't agree with that philosophy. You have to protect your customers. Pardon me one second. So I take the side of Apple. They should be able to protect their operating system from sideloading. It should be locked down as much as humanly possible so that people cannot breach the integrity of the device. So I'd love to hear your side of it. Tell me why, or if you agree or don't agree, either way. Let me know. I'm happy to talk about it. Maybe I'm talking to a whole bunch of people that already agree and I won't ever hear anything. Or I'm not talking to anybody and I'll still not hear from anybody. That said, I don't want to stick on to one particular article because I've got 20 of them to go through about. So let's go on to the next one. This next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel. Again, each one of these channels that I mentioned, the intent is to actually be a 1-hour show each week. The headline here in Stock Marketeers is, where should I retire? And oh, you know what? Let me back up one second because I did not put the headline in chat. So for the last article, I didn't put the headline in chat. And if you're listening to the podcast, I apologize. All of the links are going to be in the podcast description. They're all going to be in the YouTube description as well. So this article here, it says, where should I retire? I love small towns and rail trails. My house budget is $200,000. So where can I retire? Can you suggest some walkable towns with 3,000 to 10,000 people that are county seats and are college towns and are politically liberal. Wow. This person knows exactly what they want. For $200,000, can't imagine much of a house can be acquired. So, word of warning. I'm talking about a Market Watch article. It's written by Sylvia Ascarelli, but it was first written January 12th, 2022. And it's been modified several times since March, or all leading up to March 5th, today. Now, sometimes what happens is the article that I have aggregated into ohmTown is actually different in its title than what was originally posted on MarketWatch. In previous episodes, I've mentioned this before, but not everybody listens to every episode that I talk about. But I want to disclose that in this particular instance, it looks like the actual article remained the same. The title of the article remained the same. I'm sure some things were mentioned. But they talk about what they actually want. They have, and they will, if they retire, have an income of $30,000 to $40,000 and downsizing. And they should have sufficient proceeds from the sale of their current home to buy outright another home to avoid ongoing housing costs. Well, unfortunately, you always have ongoing housing costs. Typically, it's the tax from the city or the county. It's the property value, and that gets assessed. You have to pay that every year into an escrow account. And that can bounce around. That can fluctuate depending on the perceived value of your home by the assessor in the county. So you're always going to have that. So that could easily be, well, for a house that's only $200,000. It could be, if 10% was only, it's only going to be about, yeah, that's pretty high actually. So it can be pretty expensive. And if they only have $30,000 to $40,000, you can count on $2,000 to $3,000 being taken out of that just for the property tax. Well, let's see if they talk about any of this. The Rails to Trails Conservancy counts 2,289 of them, covering 24,905 miles. So they account for that in their assessment. Then they said, this is the author, when I selected the smallest population option under 50,000 in a county, a solidly Democratic, which we define as more than 55% who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and the median house income of less than $250,000, home price, not income, median home price of less than $250,000 in 2019, and a hospital. Well, I guess if you're retiring, I guess you need a hospital. I got one county as a 100% match. That's interesting. 5 more when they changed population to a county of 50 to $100,000 or 100,000 people. So that's really interesting. Yeah, HOA fees. If they do a condominium, and then it says that they left out college towns. That's because they define college towns as those with an R1 level research university. Interesting. So what do you think? Do you think a person can retire with 30 to 40,000 income, $200,000 house limit? I think it would be hard to do, if even possible, in today's market. I focused on counties with smaller populations, and Sauk County, Wisconsin came up. They suggested Paribu. I just think that it's very difficult And so the three suggestions are Grinnell, Iowa, Frostburg, Maryland, which is really interesting, because it's not cheap. It's not cheap in Frostburg. It's not cheap near DC in any way, shape, or form. In Grants, New Mexico. Okay, so if you're watching, I'm going to scroll up real fast, and I know that can really bother people sometimes. But what I want you to do is go over to this article at MarketWatch and read the entire article and consider this. Now, it may be something that you're not really interested in right now, but it gives you a perspective of what somebody is looking for. It might pique your curiosity, and you can start focusing on where you want to be when you retire. It may not even be on your radar right now, but when you do want to know about it, you've already had some inkling of where you want to end up. Right? So let me do a quick update here. Okay, so this next article is also in Stock Marketeers. The New York Post says a Russian-backed grocery app, it's spelled B-U-Y-K, so I guess bike, furloughs 98% of its U.S. employees due to sanctions. There is a lot of news today that involves the conflict in Ukraine, where Russia invaded Ukraine and is taking a certain part of the region of another country just out of the blue. And at least the public didn't really know in either place. They knew that there was a buildup in just outside of Ukraine. Even Ukrainians said this can't actually be happening, and then it did. And my observation is that they're going to be taking, Russia is going to invade all the way up to I think it's pronounced Dnieper. There's a major river that cuts through Ukraine. And I think that's what is going to be ultimately taken all the way over if the sanctions don't take effect, if Ukraine doesn't receive enough support to fight back against this onslaught. And in this particular instance, it says a Russian-backed grocery app, Bike, that operates in the U.S. abruptly furloughed the vast majority of its staff on Friday as sanctions against Russia left the company without funding. This is what I was talking about in previous episodes, where sanctions end up putting downward pressure on the people. And to me, the largest majority of all of these machinations are not the general population. So depending on who you talk to, you will get, well, yeah, I totally want to take over Ukraine. And others are like, I've got nothing to do with this. And it's the same way in the United States. Well, when sanctions start kicking in and every company is being impacted by the sanctions, and it is just a blanket treatment, you end up hurting a whole lot of people. And there used to be a game where you had to, quote unquote, stop the terrorists. But what would happen is you created, it's rather indiscriminate. And so because of that, there's no fidelity. And so you end up creating people who really hate what your messaging is. Unfortunately, there's so much integration where money is flowing back to a centralized government that it can fund quite a bit. This is what goes on in a lot of countries, taxes and things like that. But there's also what has been referred to me as an underground economy, where money makes its way back to some other country by means of this kind of underground economy. So sanctions really are the only way, and they have to be sometimes really brutal. I'm not a fan of them, only because it hurts innocent bystanders. But it's up to the Russian population to say to their leadership in an overt way, yes, I do appeal to this. I want you to take Ukraine, or, hey, I don't want this, right? So that's why in many countries there are protests one way or the other. But Russia is definitely on the wrong side of this action. Russian leadership, not the population. I just want to make it clear. This was a decision that I think was made entirely by the upper crust of the Russian society. And in this case, this article is written by Theo Waite, spelled W-A-Y-T. It was founded by two Russians, has sizable operations in New York and Chicago. Now, I don't know how big this is. Let's see. If we scroll down, maybe they say how many people were actually... It just says 98% of its employees. Until it can secure funding from American sources. Well, that might be hard won unless the funders of this enterprise see it as a budget move. You know, the valuation for this company just plummeted. I mean, it is zero. So if somebody comes on board and says, hey, I'm really interested in this, and here's your US sources, but all of the proceeds, all of the processing, everything has to be retained within the United States. Yeah, this company is going to be monitored from this point on, I'd say. So we have made the tough decision to temporarily furlough our employees until we are able to secure more funding sources in the US. And the founders have been providing bridge financing to Bike until they close their next investment round, which is going to be so tough right now. The 2% of employees that are not being furloughed are operations, HR, finance, legal, and IT staff. I don't know how many employees are in it. I'd have to do some research. I don't think it says it in the article overtly. At least not as a number. I don't see the number. Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm going to scroll up really fast. Go over to marketwatch.com and read this article. Russian-backed grocery app Bike furloughs 98% of U.S. employees due to sanctions. You can always click the link there in the stream chat. So this next article is a tech article, and it's in the Smack Talk channel. Zendor Passport 3. It's a review of USB-C rich global travel charger. Again, I've only seen this little snippet. I haven't read the article, but it says the newest travel charger is laden with enough USB-C power to charge up to 5 devices in more than 200 countries around the globe. And it comes in some colors. So let's take a look at it. So this is an article from Andrew O'Hara. They have these kind of anodized, I'm not sure if it's going to be plastic if you grab a hold of it, but it's a Zendor Passport 3 global travel charger loaded with USB-C. I'm not quite sure why it says rich in the URL or in the headline that was grabbed by my aggregator. That said, it has a picture of these things, and I guess one of them was customized for Andrew O'Hara, who's the author of this. But the colors are these iridescent, anodized kind of purple, blue, and gray travel chargers. And if you've never had the need of a travel charger, believe me, this little thing can sit in your drawer forever. And the moment you need it, if you pack your backpack or your bag and you throw this little thing in there, and sometimes they're actually pretty bulky, believe me, spend the money today and get one of these, and you'll always have it sitting in your drawer. Always take it out when you're going to go traveling, because depending on where you end up, because you can go from one country to another country, they'll have a different power grid and you'll need a travel charger, and it will save your butt. But then it looks like an octopus hanging out of the wall. Yeah. But there you go. It says this time around, there are 4 USB-C ports with only a single USB-A instead of the 3 USB-A and 2 USB-C. That's because USB-C is the way to go for developers. If you create a product and it still uses USB-A, you've already lost the race. You know, I said in a previous episode, I've got a product that's sitting right there, one that I developed, and I'm using USB-C. I will not go back to USB-A. It's bigger, it's already outdated, it doesn't move as much power. It's something that everybody should be walking away from. So USB-C just allows you to do so much more. But there's more of this at the article, and I urge you to go over to Apple Insider. I mean, they have a really cool picture of one of the wall warts where, I should say, the travel adapter, power adapter, that's in the article, and it's a clear one, so you can actually see the capacitors and inner workings of it. It's pretty neat. That said, it is a travel charger, so. With that, I'm going to go on to the next article. So this next article is in the Warcrafters channel, and that's because it has to do with gaming. And it comes from a specific source that focuses on gaming. This particular article is according to reporting from Bleeping Computer, the same collective that hacked NVIDIA last week, which is Lapsus with a $sign, has successfully breached the Korean tech giant Samsung as well, and released almost 190 gigabytes of confidential information, including proprietary source code. Well, that's going to just be brutal. It's somewhat easy to find out when somebody has stolen or utilized stolen code. When suddenly there's products that pop up that are obviously close. We'll see if something shakes out from this, but the article comes from PCGamer.com. It's written by Ted Litchfield. It says it hasn't made public demands yet, Lapsus, which is a hacker group that apparently made demands of NVIDIA. And let's see if there's anything else in here. Bleeping Computer is also involved in this, right, where they reported that they're waiting for word from Samsung on the matter, while WCCF Tech reports that Samsung officials will only say that they are currently assessing the situation, which is pretty typical. Until they can deconstruct what went down, they typically don't do kind of a debriefing report. And in many cases, they don't do a debriefing report that's public. They just kind of say, we've resolved the issue. So the scope of this probably isn't really known, because if they're releasing 190 gigabytes of sensitive data, you can bet that they've got more, unless they're just done with it and they don't think that they're going to get anything out of it. Which is typically why they just dump the whole lot, unless they got a lot of leverage. So the next article is in the Word and Tech. I think today's word is going to be sanctions. Again, I typically pull away from the politics side of things unless it has to do with tech or society. In the context of business, tech, and society, those are the three that I merged together for their context. This is going to be tough to walk away from, because it says Activision Blizzard has halted sales of games in Russia because of the activity in Ukraine. Further sanctions, basically stopping all financial operations between Russia and even partners of the United States. Activision Blizzard is suspending new sales of and in its games in Russia. The game company's president, Daniel Allegre, announced in a publicly shared letter to employees the move bars Russians from any new transactions with the company, which includes both the sales of games and in-game purchases. So, again, innocent bystanders are being impacted by this, but it's up to the innocent bystanders to speak out about this. And what I have said in previous episodes is this phrase: abuse happens in the dark. So these actions that are being taken in Ukraine weren't exposed to a bunch of people about that this was going to happen, as far as I've been told. Maybe it had been. And then certain things are shut down. Reporting of it, news about it, discussion of it, it's all shut down, and it's shut down by the state. And, fake news is now being grounds for imprisonment, and people that are saying anything about this and any negative view are being arrested. And that is fundamentally wrong for society. If society doesn't want something, then it shouldn't happen. And not just 5 people or 15 people or the top 1% dictating what actually happens. And I'm saying this about every country, not just one country. This article was put together, by the way, for TheVerge.com by Emma Roth. And it says further in here that the press release doesn't specify whether the ban includes both digital and physical games. I can almost guarantee it does. Anything that has to do with purchasing through any Russian channel, it will be shut down due to sanctions. Some countries have actually been pretty light in engaging these sanctions, but others, particularly U.S. companies and Eurozone countries, are embracing it entirely. So it does, however, highlight some of the contributions the company and its employees made to Ukraine, and also offers resources to workers affected by the war. And it's a shame. So let's move on. The next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel. It says all these Russian ETFs were halted indefinitely for regulatory concern. Again, I said that this was going to be somewhat of a Russian-Ukraine heavy news day, and certainly living up to that claim. Trading in a handful of Russian-related exchange-traded funds are halted indefinitely on Friday by the New York Stock Exchange ARCA and CBOE BZX exchanges, citing regulatory concern. Again, this is the sanctions. It's a MarketWatch article. Tommy Kilgore is the author. I'll just say that the cover art for this article is a tank. So, yeah. So ETFs with tickers ERUS and RUSL and FLRU were halted before Friday's open, and with RSX and RSXJ halted after the close. So like all, I'd say most MarketWatch articles, they have the tickers that are referenced at the top of the article. And for most of them, they are down quite a bit, 20%, 25%. ICE is plus 3%, and CBOE is up plus 3%. It's really 2.7%, but I was rounding up. If you are interested in this kind of stuff, then take a look at MarketWatch. You can follow the link in the chat. It'll take you over to the article snippet, the aggregated portion, which is only about 100 words. from an article. And then you can go over there and take a look. You can always chat with me about it. I tend to never really turn off from ohmTown, so be sure to stop by. We're here tomorrow again at 6 o'clock. I'm still going to continue this show until 7. And we're about halfway through with the articles. This next article is also in the Word in Tech. Again, the word in tech is really sanctions today. PayPal pauses service in Russia, citing violent military aggression. It's really about, I'd give a good 98% of the world is against this action. And then today I read that these sanctions were described as an act of war by Russian leadership, specifically Putin. You know what's an act of war? Invading a country. That's all I can say about that. Invading a country that, short of the edge case Donbass region being in turmoil because of its proximity, and who knows what kind of funding and so on, incitement of conflict in the region. That's where it was, of concern, and it was being addressed as far as I know. I'm not in the area though, and I don't have insider information, but for crying out loud, I mean, it was pretty obvious that somebody wanted to take over Ukraine. Even Trump mentioned it. And yeah, not to cite Trump, but anyway, the article says that it's going to be suspending the services in Russia due to the violent military aggression in Ukraine. And that the authors received a letter from Dan Schulman, the CEO of PayPal, and that it's official that it's going to shut down Russian operations. So let's click this link, take a look at the source. Ooh, site's a little slow. So the article's written by Emma Roth over at The Verge. Be sure to swing by there and take a look. They actually reference a tweet from Mikhailo Fedorov. I was just looking at the tweet, and yeah, it just says that it's shutting down services in Russia, citing Ukraine aggression. It's just kind of reiterating the same thing. And they have references to Reuters. It's been available for cross-border payments only. And now it's basically stopped altogether. So people are going to be impacted by this because they use PayPal as a solution for paying for items. Obviously, that's their intent. But things get really complex when you're working internationally. The next article is in Smack Talk. It says Apple is keen on major NFL rights deal beyond Sunday Ticket. The snippet that my aggregator grabbed says Apple is thought to be mulling over offering a major content deal to the NFL that would see it acquire multiple assets in a single deal, securing online live streaming rights, the NFL Sunday Ticket package, and its equity stake in NFL media to boost the Apple TV Plus catalog. Apple definitely has the money. So let's click this link. This is an Apple Insider article written by Malcolm Owen. And says the NFL is in the process of fielding offers for a number of key assets of interest to broadcasters and streaming services. In a Friday report, it is thought that Apple is one of the firms in the running to acquire them, but wants to do so in a single joint deal. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the way that deals work is they're really time limited. And so once somebody is here, I'll put it to you this way. There is a deal right now with Paramount. Paramount Plus is the app that if you are new, you get 3 months free. And if you are returning because you've canceled your service, you get 3 months free. But because I am not new or returning, I don't get the deal. So what that really promotes is zero brand loyalty. You know, if you want a deal, bow out, and then at some point the corporation goes, "Oh, we are losing people hand over fist, so let's give everybody to return a deal." And this happens with other places. You know, my internet provider did the same thing. Hey, you're about to cancel your service, so let's give you a deal. And so they knocked off $30 for a year, and now a year later, my price is back up. But like many things, you get invested and you get used to it, and there's limited competition. This is why rights of way, I think, should be open. And if you are a company that improve a right of way somehow to facilitate your enterprise, unfortunately, you've done something that should enable everybody else to benefit from that improvement of right of way. Because I can almost bet that it's a shared expense with the local population that supported this upgrade or change or whatever it is. I'm speaking specifically about telephone poles. Like Google has to fight to get their their fiber optic lines strung up, because it was the only way to get the lines there. Certain rights of way prevented them from running these cables any other way, but they couldn't. And so the customer acquisition costs and ability to run these wires in rights of way were fought tooth and nail by competitors. But Apple has the money, so maybe they will always get the right of way to do what they need to do. I hope that Google does too, because I would love to have Google Fiber symmetric gigabit internet. Yeah, for the price that I'm paying now, that would be beautiful. So, and now you know how much I'm paying for my internet, but it's nowhere near symmetric gig. So this next article is in the Daily News Show. New offices for the hybrid era. Many companies are on board. Building a gleaming new headquarters at a time when more and more people are working from home may not make sense. So let's click this link and see what they're talking about. This article is an ABC News article. Building a gleaming new headquarters at a time when more and more people are working from home may not seem to make sense. Let me pause this video. It's an article written by Josh Funk, who is an AP business writer. And let me see if I can find something really interesting in here real quick. In a sign of how committed companies are to keeping offices, some 57% in more than 2,300 office projects that giant architecture firm Gensler is now working on were started last year in the middle of the pandemic. But as they're building, companies are tweaking designs to reflect that offices may become spots that workers visit primarily to collaborate with others instead of places where they toil all day, every day. Well, you've sold me on returning to the office. Toil all day, every day. I actually have in my show lineup quite a number of things that talk about tech. One of them is Commuter Edge, and that's in the sense of trying to figure out a way, talking about ways to make the commute easier or eliminating the commute, technology, systems, processes, whatever, policy, procedure that eliminates traveling just to do what can be done in an office, right? You can go anywhere from here, from wherever you are, using Zoom, using email, using your phone, using the internet. You can see the world. Now, physically, it's a problem, right? Because you can't shake somebody's hand and you can't, quote unquote, read the room as well. But society will adapt. Society will learn to understand that spending 4 hours of your day traveling from one place to another simply to say hello and to sign a document is absurd. Traveling 4 hours a day to sit at a desk when you could take 4 minutes to come to another room, or in the same room, your desk. It's absurd. And I've been like this for 25 years. My first teleworking job was from one coast of the United States to the other, and I did that for several years, only returning because my world changed. I had to return to the other coast. So companies should really look towards enabling space for things like this, where meetings can take place only to socially network and make a connection physically, right? Just sit in the same room and say hello. And only then if it's needed, voluntary versus mandatory. But we will see what the coming years say about this, because there's definitely no reason to travel anymore into an office just to push paper. There's obviously a need for people to do manufacturing jobs, to do hands-on jobs. We understand that. Particularly things where customization is needed in a physical product. You have to be present. You have to be there, actually doing the work. But like, office work, you don't need to be there. Pretty much every field, every business, everything should be changing now. We have 2 years of experience in adapting to this virtual environment. Let's do it. It says Mutual of Omaha CEO James Blackledge said bringing people together in an office, at least periodically, will boost productivity and creativity. I don't know about productivity. And having a gleaming new $433 million office should help the company attract new talent. Now, people want benefits and money. They don't need a shiny new building. They really don't. They want to be able to spend more time on themselves. They want to be able to spend more time with their family. They want to spend more time reading, enjoying life, and not sitting in traffic. Some do, some will, I'm sure. But I would argue that it's about maybe 10% of the workforce, maybe. The rest would rather, heck, even the manufacturing side, they would probably rather have all of the components sent to their house and they can sit in their living room building whatever it is they currently have to build in a warehouse. Obviously it scales, there's context. Don't get me wrong, I understand the full scope of it, but come to the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, come to my chat on twitch.tv/ohmTown. Come and talk to me about it. Tell me what you think about it. That would be great. I'd love to hear your voice. This next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel. While feds gave students pandemic relief from debt burden, some universities took them to court. This is something in the United States that is going to continue to spring up. The Stock Marketeers channel aggregates financial news, and this particular article is from MarketWatch as well. I have a few sources that are very prolific in their production of relevant news. Not everything that they publish gets pulled into my aggregator, but much of it does, and only a small portion, as you can see here. So when I click this link, you'll get to see it, and I urge you again to go over and go to ohmTown, click on the links. Become a citizen, by the way. Go over to ohmTown.com and sign up, or sign in if you already have an account. Become a citizen of ohmTown. And you'll start earning points, because I have a gamification thing going, and I will eventually transfer all of that into Twitch, but right now I don't have that ability. So at any rate, let's click this link and look at what the rest of the article says. This article is written by Jillian Berman. While feds gave students pandemic relief from debt burden, some universities took them to court. I heard about this recently as well, and then this article popped up, so I wanted to see it. A Market Watch investigation of cases in the Philadelphia area found that the University of Pennsylvania, Rutgers, Drexel, and others filed more than 100 lawsuits last year during the pandemic. So let me see here. I'm sorry, I'm actually typing. I don't want dead air, but I had to say something. I had to do a search. So there is a thing called the CARES Act, and that established funds for higher education called the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, which went to institutions that used no less than 50% of the funds received under certain sections of the CARES Act to provide emergency financial aid and grants to students. Basically, there's a context here that I'm not sure if it's going to be mentioned in this article. But schools received money, and depending on the school, it received quite a bit of money. I'm not sure if any of that is going to be written about in here, but let me scroll real quick, and I'll try not to be silent because nobody wants to listen to dead air. But it's called HERF, right? HEERF, and it provided funds to schools. And these lawsuits against students that have their financial aid suspended, and then for whatever reason, I think the context of this is really going to matter. Grabbing a quick snippet from here, Penn has a defined process for dealing with unpaid tuition, providing students with time to establish a payment window or a plan without any collection fees, and large unpaid tuition accounts are referred to Watson and Allard only if a student fails to establish a repayment plan after several months. So yeah, I think that this might have nothing to do with the HERF side of things, because it's supposed to be, well, I mean, students still received funding for going to classes, but the repayment was suspended. So hold on a second. So yeah, I think everybody continued receiving financial aid if there was. Pardon me one second. Obviously, if parents or the person wasn't receiving financial aid and wasn't paying tuition but signed the contract, they would have to either enter into a repayment plan, which would be paused if it was a fund that came from the government, private or federal loans, right? It's a quasi loan system here, from student loans, federal student loans. So some of them are actually fully federal government, and some of them are categorized as quasi federal. And so there's a private loan component there, but it's insured by the federal government. Suing somebody to get that tuition seems weird unless the school wasn't capable of receiving HERF CARES Act funding. I would have to do a deeper dive into this to find out if they were eligible for CARES Act / HERF funding. But if they did receive HERF funding, I think that they would have, should have, or could have been okay. I'd have to look at the HERF Act or the CARES Act entirely to see exactly what it covered. So in June 2021, Penn sued him, who is Riley. So the person's last name is Riley. I think they just George Riley, who's now 59, was proud to study at Ivy League school. In this case, it was University of Pennsylvania. Riley hoped that by choosing Penn, he could help his daughters imagine a future for themselves at a similar institution. Well, that's all great, but you still have to pay it. Unless the federal government writes it off, which I think should happen. I really do. There have been times where taxpayer dollars have gone to institutions, right? We had the 2008 collapse. We've had other collapses where banks were bailed out. I think that the middle class, including, graduates of college who have used the funding to fund their education, I have no problem with these loans being written off, just like the uptick in financial. So the federal government basically printed a mint of money and threw it all to banks during the financial collapse. Otherwise, there would have been a complete depression of the financial system collapse, basically. Arguably, there were some that didn't need any of that funding to stay stable. Well, in this particular instance, you've got something like $1 trillion worth of student loans outstanding. If you were to pay all of that back, guess where all of that money would go? Straight to the citizens. Everybody that would be making money right now would be able to buy things and not be burdened by their student loans, nor the interest that's on top of it. And during a time of inflation, those student loans can balloon massively. And so paying them off now would pay society in general in spades, because all of these people with graduate degrees, with 4-year degrees, with 2-year degrees that have their loans wiped out would be able to spend more, grow more, and basically be another part of their local society, local community, spending money there. Whereas now they're going to be paying back these student loans that are going to increase over time. Depends on the terms of the student loan. And it will follow them. I mean, this person, depending on how much they have, Riley said he took on coursework recommended by academic advisors that left him liable for this to the school for $13,000 he couldn't afford to pay. So, I mean, that is small time. Student loans of $13,000 is small time. I mean, there are people out there with hundreds of thousands of dollars. 13,000 is nothing. Well, anyway, there is context to all of this, and you should probably look into it more, and not across the board. There is a context to each individual college and person and their interaction because of how their loans are constructed, what went down between the school and the student, and expectations, and basically the world. I mean, there's a lot of complexity in this, and I don't really think that an article can do enough justice to an investigation, but it will continue on. It says here, while the government has paused payments and interest on most federal student loans and frozen collection actions on all government-owned and guaranteed student loans for nearly 2 years, some American universities and colleges have pursued former students who owe them money in court. The federal government has said its student debt payment pause is due to the unprecedented economic hardship caused by COVID-19. That, by the way, was extended to the middle of this year and supposedly will stop at the end of June. So I hope everybody with a student loan is ready for this, because it's going to be coming back. Okay, let's continue on, because I don't think that we can get enough picture in this short reading of the material, but I would be happy to talk about it more if you want to. The next article is over in Stock Marketeer's channel, Outside the Box. Here's what will happen to U.S. food prices as wheat futures keep surging. If you don't know about this, inflation is raising the cost of everything, and coupled with Russia and Ukraine, this article is stating Russia and Ukraine grow about 14% of the world's wheat and account for about 28% of global wheat exports. So this is an opinion piece coming out of MarketWatch, and it says, here's what will happen to U.S. food prices as wheat futures keep surging. Again, it was modified between March 2nd and March 5th. Even the URL is different. And it says, over the past 2 decades, Russia and Ukraine have become major players in world grains markets, especially for wheat. That could be a reason why Russia would want to take over Ukraine, considering it's an exporter of a product, and it's a product that can be grown and consumed. Like all consumables, it is a cash crop, literally, or whoever is in control of it. And if you've got enough tanks, you can go and take over any country. We'll see what happens. In the past 2 years, both were the source of about 14% of the world's wheat production. Yeah, in the U.S., we can produce everything that we would need internally. I have no doubt about that. But there's how can I put this? There's a revenue benefit from exporting a portion of your own product somewhere else, because the income that's generated is higher than if all of your product was made internally. I'm not sure if I'm describing this properly, but if I have 100 things, but I only consume 50 things and I sell 50 things overseas at a rate that is more expensive than if I import some other product, let's say wheat, right? If I import that other 50 wheat and I actually consume 100 wheat domestically, I could actually make a profit because of the 50 that I sold somewhere else was purchased at a higher valuation than the 50 that I imported. If that makes sense to you. But in that margin, if there is profit and you are a savvy business person, or just powered by dumb luck that this exchange happens, I could import something from Ukraine at $100 million, but sell the exact same thing to somebody else for $110 million, and I've made $10 million in profit. Simple as that, right? Yep, that's how it is with this. Possibly. One thing that I want to state is that you never want to consume everything that you have to offer. You don't want to consume all of your oil or your reserves. You don't even want to pull it out of the ground unless you have it either to sell for profit and have reserves, and you know that you can get it from somewhere else, because you don't want to deplete your domestic reserves. You don't want to deplete your in-ground domestic supply. It's smarter to use somebody else's at a lower valuation, and then you have yours longer term. I might be saying the quiet thing out loud, but that's kind of how it is. This next article is in Stock Marketeers, investors brace for a change in the consumer price index reading. Okay, so this is another MarketWatch article, and it's Market Extra. Investors brace for U.S. CPI reading of close to 8% next week as risk of durable inflation grows. February's CPI report on Thursday is expected to be the first of 3 readings either close to or above 8%, based on market implied levels of fixings. So this article was written by Vivian Liu Chen, And it has a little caption of a reasonable goal for inflation is 3% long term for the next decade, says Eric Levy, I guess, Chief Investment Officer at Baylord. So they always reference some symbols, tickers, as I call them. That was the old name for them. Now they're just symbols. But it says earlier this week, U.S. crude topped $116. I think it brushed up to 120 at one point, I think, or it was hedging towards it. Maybe that's it. A barrel for the first time in over a decade, exacerbating other inflationary forces underway during the pandemic. Yeah, I saw regular gas at $4 recently, which is a dollar, somewhat close to $1 higher than it had been just about 3 days earlier. And it's just going to put downward pressure on people who cannot afford an increase in oil, an increase in gas, an increase of anything, because wages are stagnant. Some places it's not, but in many places wages are staying the same. There's 3% maybe cost of living, which isn't a raise. It's simply matching inflation. Now we're at 7.5, 8%. Some say it's going to go to 10%. We shall see what happens. The future is interesting times, as I've been told by countless advisors. Interesting times, which is an old adage. May you live in interesting times. That's actually kind of a curse. Because it's a euphemism for trouble. Stagflation has absolutely become more likely, with growth being impeded by a variety of factors that already existed coming into the year, says David Spica, President and Chief Investment Officer at Guidestone Capital Management, which manages about $18.2 billion from Dallas. Ukraine has compounded that. So we will see. Thursday is another day. And what happens really is there's a lot of machinations that take place in the market. And 8% may be lower than what I think is going to happen. But we will see, right? We'll talk about it more maybe Thursday, if it remains on my radar. The next article is over at the Mobile channel, and it says, Hubble observes a not-so-close encounter. There's the link. The twin galaxies NGC 4496A and NGC 4496B dominate the frame of the image that we're about to see from NASA ESA Hubble Space Telescope. Both galaxies lie in the constellation Virgo, but despite appearing side by side in this image, they are at vastly different distances from Earth. One is 47 million light years from Earth, while the other is 212 million light years from Earth. And the enormous distances between the two galaxies mean that the two are not interacting and only appear to overlap because of a chance alignment. But there's a neat effect with at least stars. There's one from NASA. This article is from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. It doesn't have an author attached to it. Otherwise, I would let you know. But it's over at phys.org. And the picture is really neat. So it has the two galaxies that are mentioned. But there's this cool lensing effect around stars that you can look behind an object because it warps space-time. You can actually see behind it. And it's an interesting effect. And you can see kind of something similar, although the lensing is based off of heat rising from the surface. But if you're looking across water or other things, you can actually see around the curvature. And that's why why ships in the past were seen as floating sometimes up in the sky, flying ships. It really had nothing to do with something supernatural. It really was just a ship on the ocean, but this lensing effect raised it up into the air, and you could see something very far away. It says, chance galactic alignments such as this provide astronomers with the opportunity to delve into the distribution of dust in these galaxies. Galactic dust, the dark tendrils threading through both NGC 4496A and NGC 4496B, adds to the beauty of astronomical images, but it also complicates astronomers' observations. So they talk about redshift as well in this article, but I want you to go over to phys.org and click this link for Hubble observes a not so close encounter. You can also click the link that's in my chat and on ohmTown.com. The next article is in The Word in Tech. And again, we talk about sanctions. Internet backbone provider shuts off service to Russia. I think this hurts the common person, which has zero interest in anything other than being able to stream Twitch. Cogent Communications, an internet backbone provider that routes data across intercontinental connections, has cut ties with Russian customers over its invasion of Ukraine. Those customers had nothing to do with it, as first reported by the Washington Post. But again, the argument is if you don't want this action taking place, then you need to do something about it. You need to say something about it. You need to have your voice heard and make it known that you are not part of this. The US-based company is one of the world's largest internet backbone providers and serves customers in 50 countries, including a number of high-profile Russian companies. It says the shutdown won't disconnect Russians completely. Let's click the link. This article was written by Emma Roth. It has an interesting picture of a wireframe Earth and what looks like a target around it. But let's see where it says unplugging Russia from Cogent's global network will likely result in slower connectivity, but won't completely disconnect Russians from the internet. Midori, who is, I guess, internet analyst at a network tracking company, Kentech. It'll result in slower connectivity. Traffic from Cogent's former customers will instead fall back on other backbone providers in the country, potentially resulting in network congestion. There isn't any indication as to whether other internet backbone providers will also suspend services in Russia. So there's a tweet here that says, WTF, Cogent, cutting Russians off from internet access cuts them off from the sources of independent news and the ability to organize anti-war protests. Don't do Putin's dirty work for him. Yes, I agree. Abuse happens in the dark. That is my saying. I've said it previously in this episode. I'll say it again in future, and I've said it in past. The idea of keeping something like this private, this action, silencing discussion, if it is truthful discussion, shouldn't be shut down. And overt lies and misinformation should be flagged as such. Because if you are hanging out with somebody and they are your friend and they lie to you and you know that it's a lie, you say it. You call their BS out. You let it be known that what they are saying is garbage. And if it keeps on happening, you stop being friends with that person. If they are lying to you and spouting garbage to everybody else, you tell the other people too. The person's talking out of their butt. So you shut it all down. That is society's mechanism with dealing with misinformation and lies. But online, you can spew whatever you want, and it's supposed to go out regardless. No, that's not how it is. That's why people shut down other people online, call out their bogus responses or statements, alternative facts and garbage. So this should all be left open. There should be communication. There should be the ability for somebody to say, hey, I don't agree with this. Allow the exchange of information. And obviously the bogus information should be flagged online and or stopped from being posted publicly. And you can have the two, because in the United States, freedom of speech doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. Freedom of speech means the government can't respond to whatever you say by imprisonment and hostile actions and whatnot. But the rest of society has its laws. So you can't hurt somebody because of their opinion. But I can sit there and say, shut up. You're lying. So in this context, shutting down communication means nobody can talk. The beneficial side can't talk. The people that are controlling the situation, they can still talk because they have means of communication. So I think that internet access affords way more benefit. So it should be put back on. That's my hot take. Okay. And there's obviously more context to it. This article was grabbed kind of last minute. It's about, because I want to talk about what FAR is. FAR is Federal Acquisition Regulations. It's government contracting, federal government contracting here in the United States. It's not for everybody. I understand that. Obviously, my aggregator kind of went off the rails. So I'm going to go over to this article straight away. And it's an article in the federalnewsnetwork.com site. And it says it's basically all things contracting. Okay. So if you follow that link, you can find out about some discussion about federal contracting, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk about federal government contracting. The reason why, and the problem with this is that there's a lot of misperception about what federal contracting is, how it's monitored, how it's processed, who even can take part in it. There's quite a bit here. So I want to point you to this article, and you can always look at it in Apple Podcasts, all things contracting. Just do a search for that and you'll find it. And it says AM Tower Off Center is the name of the podcast itself, but you can actually find the podcast title, All Things Contracting. So it says, this week on AM Tower Off Center, Larry Allen, president of Allen Federal Business Partners, joined host Mark Amtower for a lively discussion regarding the perpetual continuing resolution and how it impacts both feds and contractors. This, by the way, I always see it diminishing. 2-week continuing resolution. And the whole thing about contractors in general, people should talk about. And again, this isn't really for those who have a deep understanding, right? There are people that are very deep understanding of federal contracting. I want you to come and talk to me, but live. I'll put you up there and we can talk about it live. That way you can share your wisdom with people who don't know about the ins and outs, the processes of federal contracting, both from the contractor side and from the federal government side. More people need to know more so that they're just not outright enraged by what goes on with federal government. The 2022 NDAA and e-commerce issues for both the General Services Administration and the Defense Department, emergence of Polaris, issues around CIO SP4, and more. Without a doubt, there's going to be more there. So go check it out. The link is right there. 1 second. Boink. And my last article is, again, in Far Weekly. DoD awards nearly $2 billion to build first satellite-based backbone of JADC2. I'm going to click the link because my aggregator grabbed noise from the top of the site. This is an article by Jared Serbu. The Pentagon Space let me rephrase this. Let me restate this. The Pentagon Space Development Agency made awards worth a combined $1.8 billion on Monday to start building an interconnected mesh network of 126 small satellites in low Earth orbit, and what officials say will be the communications backbone of the military's vision for joint all-domain command and control. Ta-da! So it went to 3 companies: Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and York Space Systems. And you may not have heard of York Space Systems. If you have, come and talk to me, because I haven't looked at York. But I know about Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. They've been around for quite some time. At any rate, $2 billion for the next generation communications backbone. What do you think? Pretty cool. Will it be worth $2 billion? Will we get $2 billion worth of benefit? Some people will say nope, right out of the gate. For every dollar spent by the federal government, there is a return of $8, which is not bad. There are concerns about overspending, but that brings us back to the rules and regulations of FAR. And we can talk about it next time on the ohmTown Daily News Show, because today I'm done. I want to thank you for coming to my chat. If you are in my chat, if you visit me on YouTube, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Be sure to follow over there. This episode will go up either later tonight or tomorrow. That said, if you're watching it on YouTube or the podcast, obviously, depending on when you listen to it, it will be whenever you listen to it. And with that, I think I'm done for the night. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.